The year was 1910. The calm Korean peninsula was woken up from its deep slumber by the Japanese. The entire peninsula was annexed by Japan. By 1931, Japan was already a super belligerent force. It began imperial expansion in Manchuria in 1931, Inner Mongolia in 1936, and finally China in 1937. Japan was unstoppable. Empire of Japan entered World War II on 27th of September 1940. Germany and Japan were at two different sides of the world, but were united in their aim of terrorizing the world. Then came 1944. Japan seemed to be stuck. The tide of World War II turned against it. Out of desperation, it started drafting ethnic Koreans into its military. Then the United States detonated two nuclear weapons over the Japanese cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki on 6th and 9th of August 1945. Japan surrendered to the Allied forces on 15th of August 1945. And Korea became independent. But its tryst with wars was only just beginning. Korea was split at the 38th parallel. Soviet influenced the northern part of the peninsula, while America took care of the south. Thus were born the two Korean countries of North and South Korea. The Second World War was over, but the Cold War immediately began. 5 years later, a seemingly calm Korean peninsula erupted again. North Korea and South Korea went after each other. Soviets supported the North, and Americans helped the South. 2.5 million persons lost their lives. The fight ended in July 1953, with Korea still divided into two hostile states, and the hostility continues till date. But on Tuesday, North and South Korea announced a surprise and unexpected thaw in ties. Hi and welcome. This is TFI Global, the foreign affairs and geopolitical analysis arm of the TFI Media Group, and I'm your host Atul Mishra. In this video, I will tell you how Putin is doing his best to reunite the two Koreas. Let's begin. On Tuesday, North and South Korea opened up all kinds of communication lines between each other after close to a year of no official contact. The opening of all communication lines, including military and political liaisons, came after the leaders of South Korea and North Korea, Moon Jae-in and Kim Jong-un, exchanged letters with each other recently, underscoring the importance of stability and peace in their peninsula. According to a statement by the South Korean president's office, Kim and Moon have exchanged personal letters since April, which have been aimed at improving ties. The thaw in ties between the two Koreas, however, has not come naturally. In fact, it seems Russia has played a big role in ensuring both North and South Korea begin getting along once again. Since the United States under Joe Biden practically has no Korea policy, and China is working overtime to strong-arm Pyongyang into pursuing aggression against Washington, D.C. and all countries which Beijing shares enmity with. North Korea has been resisting China for quite some time now, but there's only so much an impoverished country like itself can do. Now Moscow seems to have come to the starving country's rescue. Russia has been offering and allowing North Koreans the opportunity to work in the Far East region despite a ban on UN member states to let North Korean labor work in their territories. North Korean workers who are employed abroad are required to share a significant portion of their earnings with the Kim Jong-un regime in Pyongyang. This arrangement, which has been battered severely by the COVID-19 pandemic, has been a major source of income for Kim's regime. According to the Washington Post, the US believes the North Korean government was earning more than $500 million per year before the UN sanctions from nearly 100,000 workers abroad, of which some 50,000 were in China and 30,000 in Russia. It seems Russia has told North Korea that its workers can continue working with their employment in the Russian Far East for so long as Pyongyang decouples from China and gives up on its belligerence. As part of the same, President Vladimir Putin's Korea reunification plan seems to be right on track, which is why the two countries suddenly announced a restoration of communication channels beginning Tuesday. The Korean leaders are learned to have restored all lines of communication as a first step towards betterment of ties. Earlier, while dealing a major blow to Chinese vaccine diplomacy, the Kim Jong-un-led North Korea had reportedly rejected the use of Chinese COVID-19 vaccines for its immunization drive. Instead, the country is hopeful of receiving Russian-made Sputnik vaccines for free in the coming days. Russia has already offered its Sputnik vaccine to Pyongyang on a number of occasions. However, China was acting as an impediment for North Korea to procure the Russian-made vaccines. But North Korea junked Chinese vaccines, and it is quite telling of how the impoverished state no longer wants to work as a client state of Beijing. This comes as North Korea faces unprecedented food shortages spurred out of China's orchestrated clampdown on bilateral trade in May this year. Starvation has intensified after North Korean imports from China saw a whopping 90% drop in May as compared to April, owing to Xi Jinping's strong-arm tactics. Media reports have described the markets in North Korea as currently in turmoil, where the price of white rice and corn have skyrocketed since the beginning of June. Therefore, North Korea has realized the devilish designs of China and is therefore warming up to Moscow. North Korea has been ignoring the Biden administration. Therefore, it is highly unlikely that the recent thaw in relations between the two Korean countries was brokered by the White House. Meanwhile, Pyongyang has been turning to Moscow in order to alleviate its woes, and Putin has gladly obliged. As a matter of fact, Putin could even be looking to achieve a Russia-brokered Korean reunification, which would be a massive boost for Moscow's stature around the world. The Korean reunification, although not expected anytime soon, especially if Kim Jong-un's reign continues, is not entirely impossible. As a matter of fact, North Korea, subsequent to the Second World War, was under Soviet control for some time. Therefore, Putin is also looking to revive former Russian glory and control over the Korean peninsula by snatching Pyongyang from the lap of Xi Jinping. A reunification will tremendously benefit both the countries. While South Korea has tremendous technological and industrial prowess, it lacks sufficient labor and manpower. North Korea is frankly impoverished, and if the country's citizens get to work in South Korea, they would do it without batting an eyelid. Additionally, North Korea would be exposed to an era of development it has never seen under its nugatory communist dictatorship. Vladimir Putin seems to be playing a very far-sighted game in Korea. It has realized that Pyongyang is livid at China and is capitalizing on the same for restoring peace in the Korean peninsula.